So did you know that this year there'll be about 130 million babies born worldwide? And did you also know that about 5 million of these babies are going to have some sort of birth defect? Now you're probably aware of some of the most common ones: congenital heart defects, spina bifida, cleft palate. But what really causes them? Well, I'll ask you a question. How many of you were advised to take folate during pregnancy, or had a partner who was advised to take folate? Quite a lot of you. I'm guessing a lot of you were probably also told to not smoke or to not drink, because those things can damage your unborn baby. They can poison your baby and cause defects. And we also know that a lot of birth defects are caused by mutations in your genes that we've heard about today as well. But that only accounts for about 50% of birth defects. And would you believe, even in this day and age, we still have very little idea what causes the other 50% of birth defects. So what I want to do, and my research is involved in trying to uncover why 2.5 million babies around the world are going to be born with a birth defect. Why do they get them? Now, we can't really do experiments on humans. That's frowned upon. And humans aren't really a great model anyway, because we're so genetically diverse. And so what my group does is we use simple animal models, such as mice or zebrafish, where we can get genetically identical embryos and then tease out the function of genes by making mutations and stopping these genes from working to figure out what they do. And so today I'd just like to share one story with you about one of the genes that we've investigated, a gene called GRHL3. You don't need to know what this gene does, but just be aware that this gene exists in mice and in fish and in humans. And using mice, what we can do is we can stop this gene from working, just this one gene. Everything else is the same. And we can see what happens. And if we knock out this gene in mice, we find that these mice get severe neural tube defects. So about 5% of the mice will get an open brain and skull, but 100% of the mice get a spinal cord defect identical to the human condition spina bifida. Now, we made an interesting discovery. We found that if we took out a substance from their diet, the mum's diet called inositol, a vitamin B8, we found that the incidence of the open brain and skull went from 5% to 50%. That's a 10-fold increase. So we reasoned that if a deficiency increases the defect, maybe if we add more of this vitamin B8, we can reduce the defect. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. So when we supplemented the diet with vitamin B8, we found that we could reduce the incidence of the spinal cord defects from being present in every embryo to only being present in half the embryos. And so discoveries like this allow us to identify genetic mutations that can be rescued through supplements. Now, the important thing about vitamin B8, it's not an artificial substance made in a lab. It's a naturally occurring vitamin present in fruits, melons, beans, and nuts. And as such, it's a safe product that pregnant women can take to reduce the chances of birth defects. Similarly, we also use zebrafish. And in this case, we can use fish to dissect some of the genetic pathways. What genes does GRHL3 work with? How can we understand this? The blue lines you see there down the bottom, they're the bones of the fish lower jaw. You can see they're very clear. We can use this model to look at these very closely. We found if we stop GRHL3 from working in the fish, you can see the bones, there's a lot less of them. They're a lot less dense. And this is very similar to defects that occur in humans as well. And so what we found is if we could put back another gene, in this case EDN1, we could rescue this defect. We can restore bone density. We can restore integrity to the lower jaw. And so the goal of my group's research is to try and find out novel things that we can actually give to pregnant mums that are going to reduce the chances of their babies being born with a debilitating birth defect. And even though now in first world healthcare systems such as Australia's, we can correct a lot of these defects surgically, these options simply aren't available in poorer countries. And so by giving mums safe supplements, we hope to reduce the incidence of birth defects worldwide. Thank you.